Hi, Laura. It's so wonderful to see you and to get a chance to talk with you before we go to the conference in just a few short weeks. So, welcome.
Patty, I always am so grateful to you. I love being with you. I love what you bring not only to our industry, but to our world right now. And something that we were talking about in getting ready for this is just how much we need to all be playing our part in bringing more light to the world.
And I love that. It really does feel in so many ways with information coming out from a lot of different spaces that we're in a dark time. And for those of us who have been working in the wellness industry and the well-being industry and understanding worksite wellness, of course, with your book, I have it right here.
Thank you so much.
We've been looking for the best in humanity. We've been looking for all that's right in the world. And so I do want to acknowledge, and that was the part that I was in your book, is how do we look for the best in the world? I think it's also important to acknowledge the ugliness that's coming up, whether it's the Epstein files, the lies from the government for the last many decades, regardless of the administration. I think we're learning a lot about what has been done behind the scenes. And acknowledging that I think is important because I think we've been gaslighted for a long time through multiple government administrations. And even now, what are we not being told? And so I believe we're coming to a place where we're shining a light on the secrets of people with power. And there are a lot of people with power that have kept a lot of secrets. For one example, and I'm going to turn it over to you, is my really curiosity with the Epstein files has been looking for words like mind, mindset, thoughts, beliefs, behaviors, and it's abundant. And it was a big part of, I think, the power structure. And I'm curious sort of what your thoughts are and what is coming up for you during this time as we start shining lights on things.
The thing that I keep thinking about a lot is this idea of moving from bystander to upstander. And I think a lot of us feel helpless. And so we're not necessarily the perpetrators, but we are bystanders, many of us. And we feel like that these forces that are much bigger than any of us, we have to remind ourselves that they are not bigger than all of us, and that we can start to unify, work together to be upstanders, as in taking small actions and really starting to move up the scale so that we do have more transparency across all administrations. And I think that what you're talking about, this sense that there are a few people who hold a lot of power and also who have a lot of wealth. And what we're seeing right now, in my view, a lot of this is the outcome of a skewed distribution of wealth. We have the highest level of income inequality in nearly 100 years. We've kind of returned back to the Gilded Age. And I think that that's a lot of what's driving what's happening right now. A lot of people feel like that they've been ripped off. And Patty, when you and I were in our coming of age, we grew up in a time when we had one of the highest levels of income equality, where there really was, it really peaked in the late 70s, where we really had a sense of doing what's good for the public. I went to public school all the way through until Stanford, and I know you did the same. We're both classmates at Stanford, both athletes at Stanford. You and I both benefited from Title IX, and so we really reap the fruits of what can happen when we work together collectively to really invest in what's good for all of us, not just a few of us.
And I love that. And that
Mhm.
that erases political party lines,
Yeah.
erases all of these what I really feel are false labels that have given us some weird sense of security, and yet it's divided us
Mhm.
exponentially around color and title and wealth and inequalities in so many ways. And I want to start seeing each other as just human again. And there are forces that I believe are inhuman, that are pushing against us. One of the things that struck me that I found and has since been talked about in the Epstein files is a conversation calling us cattle, and calling the population cattle, calling us sheep, and our willingness to believe what we're told. And to me, we've been told by, you can name any amount of different resources, lie after lie after lie. And I don't believe there's a single news outlet out there that hasn't lied to us in some way, shape, or form. And so, how do we bring our sovereignty back? How do we start to get curious on our own, to start talking to each other and really bringing back the heart of the relationships that we have, start looking at the common good and start building these communities? I agree with you. I never thought I would wish for the 1970s again. But if my grandson could grow up in North Dakota in the 1970s, that feels like a gift that right now I can't even comprehend getting back to.
There are a couple of things to think about. One is critical thinkers and civility. So I want to start first with being a critical thinker. And Thomas Jefferson spoke about how public education is the foundation of a democracy, a democracy that works. And as a former public high school teacher, one of the things that really was ingrained in me so much, particularly having attended Brown University, gotten my master's there, and I was trained by one of the greatest minds in educational reform of all time. His name was Ted Sizer, and critical thinking is really the foundation of an effective education, and it's also the foundation of a democracy that works. And right now, what's happening, ironically, in our efforts to improve education, and it's actually really happened a lot under the Obama administration, there's been this forward push on a lot of testing. And when you have too much testing, the intention is good to create more accountability, but what ends up happening is that teachers then begin to prepare their students to take a test, as opposed to really going deep into the curriculum, and to really enable the students to become critical thinkers. And so I think that that's one piece. We really need to go back to looking at how can we help our young people in our public school system to be critical thinkers, because you cannot have an effective democracy if the people within it are not critical thinkers. Now, the second piece is civility. And this is something that George Washington spoke about. And we all know about how he lived by rules of civility. And so a recent guest that I had on my LinkedIn Live was Christine Parath, who is a leading expert on civility in the workplace. And in her book, Mastering Civility, she actually opens with a quote from George Washington derived from this rules of civility. And I think that we really need to return to this sense of civility in not only in our communities, but in our workplaces, in our homes. And that I often think about how much better of a place we would be in right now if we all started to abide more to rules of civility. And what I'm seeing so often is that a real breakdown around what it means to be civil. And so returning back to this idea of being an upstander as opposed to a bystander, one of the things that I've really been focused on is how I can demonstrate acts of civility and really uplift people around me. So whether it's you, Patty, right now in our conversation, or the people who are listening into this right now, or if it's people that I pass by on the sidewalk, I really think about the 5-10 rule, which is when I'm 10 feet apart, I make eye contact with them, I smile. When we're 5 feet apart, I say hello. And you can't believe the smiles that I get from people because they feel seen, and I'm manifesting and I'm sharing with this person a moment of civility. And that is one small way that I can be an upstander as opposed to a bystander.
I love that, Laura. And that, that typifies you. That's who you are. And, I'll go a step further is that we can only show up like that. I mean, I see you. You are confident, you are glowing, you are beautiful as always. And
Mm.
we can only show up that way when we've reconciled this in our own hearts, when we are civil to ourselves, when we have
Mm.
found an inner voice that is supportive instead of critical. And what I'm finding with the leaders I'm working with is that because we have been labeling people for so long and segregating ourselves in so many different boxes for so long, that we're all questioning our worth. And that has not served us. And it is time for us to find our sovereignty, to find our voice, to find our place in the world where we experience our magic. And that is this light we have in literally every cell of our being. And when we can show up knowing how valuable we are, I believe it changes the way we interact with others. Elon Musk I don't is never going to be able to create another Laura Putnam or another anybody that's listening to this. There's no possibility that he can create something as magical as any one of us that can listen to this. And yet we question our value. And it's time to return to nature. It's time to return to our authentic being. I believe most of us have been stimulated beyond what the human condition was meant to accept. And as we remember who we are at our calm, creative, above the line best, we can start remembering that the world can be a different place.
I got to hear Ariana Huffington speak. I've actually heard her speak a couple times, right? And one of the things that she talked about was this idea that in her head is this annoying roommate. And I think about that, this annoying roommate that I have in my head who is not civil to me, and how it really does start with that sense of being kind to ourselves, and really working with that annoying roommate to really help them to be a kind roommate
So
in
here's
our
it's
heads,
fun. This is where it gets fun.
right?
Neuroscience, right? Neuroscience will tell you that as long as you consider that an annoying roommate, it will stay an annoying roommate. So what
Mm.
neuroscience says is that your brain believes everything you say. So what if that roommate became the most loving, beautiful, thoughtful, supportive person in your life, instead of being the annoying roommate? And every thought we have, we can't control the thoughts we have, but we can control the focus we give it. We can control if your annoying roommate says, "Oh, man, you're looking tired today. This is not going to be fun today. You go, wow, that's an interesting thought, but it's not mine. It's that voice that I was trained to have when I was a small child, and I can choose a different conversation." And you
That's
can
right.
with every
Yeah.
single thought that comes in our head, because every thought that comes in our head is from conditioning. We've been conditioned to believe in a certain way, and this is what neuroscience is telling us. So we can continue to focus on those thoughts, or we can find ourselves a new bone because we are fully capable of rewiring our neural networks.
I think I do believe there's a lot of power in neuroscience and plasticity and our capacity to be able to really shift our mindset. And and I would say that we cannot ignore the impact that our surrounding and environment and culture has on us. And in fact, we know from the research from World Health Organization that the so-called social determinants of health, namely how we grow up, how we grow old, where we work, where we live, where we go to school, that in fact accounts for 80% of our capacity to be well. And so yes, we need to be thinking about what we can do for ourselves and for our own mindsets. And we really need to be thinking about what we can do collectively to really start to address some of these larger forces, as we've been talking about. So things like big tech or big food. Those are large forces. We know from the story of cigarette smoking. I mean, we as a nation, we reduced our rates of smoking by nearly 75%. And that was because of collective action. We held those larger forces, those cigarette companies, we held them to account, and they were made to testify before Congress and admit that they were intentionally putting out addictive products. We labeled the cigarette packs. We taxed them, and we shifted the norms around that, and we started creating spaces where people couldn't smoke in public places, in bars, in workplaces. That's what really is why we were able to be so successful. And so we need to be thinking about how we can do that with our other dimensions of well-being, how we can push back, particularly around big tech. And I'm actually very excited around what's happening around that right now. Jonathan Haidt has been talking about this a lot, author of the Anxiety Generation, and just about how big tech has been intentionally putting out an addictive product that is particularly impacting our young people. And it's time that we held them to account. And that is happening right now in Los Angeles in this trial that's happening. So I think that we're going to start seeing more and more of a tipping point around that as well.
Yes. And the only way we're going to have change is when we talk about it, when we bring
Yep.
these things out in the open and then look at ways. So as we go into this, and I know we did a fireside chat during COVID, and one of the questions I asked almost everyone was, what are you doing to keep yourself centered, to keep yourself grounded, and to ensure that you're able to give from the overflow, that you're able to, say hi when you're 5 feet away from someone instead of being, caught in a conversation with your roommate. Would love to hear from you on what you're doing.
Patty, I would say the number one thing that I've been doing right now, in addition to friends and family, I'm so grateful for having friends like you. You were recently at my birthday celebration along with Greg. Thank you so much. I mean, those kinds of community events and bringing together friends and family is just at the heart of who we are. I mean, it's no accident that one of the longest studies to date conducted by the Harvard Research Center on Longevity has found that the number one determinant of not only quantity but quality of life is love and connection. And I would say, in addition to humans, I have been just loving our dog Honey. And one of the most amazing things about having a dog, which is only recent for us, we got Honey now 3 years ago, is now I'm seeing San Francisco, my community here, through a whole new set of eyes. I've gotten to know this whole dog community. People want to talk to me and interact with me because I'm with Honey. And so it's not only my bonding time with her, but it's enabled me to connect with others in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise. So I would say Honey has really been filling my bucket.
Oh, I just love that. And you can see how you're just glowing from that.
Yeah.
That's what we all need, right? Is there something that's unique to us as we get to know ourselves and just know how this brings out the best in you. I just love seeing you so happy and glowing. So, especially with what's happening in the world. And we can do that. We can find the grace, we can find the patience and the self-care in order to get us through this. And I just love our conversation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Colorado in just a couple of weeks.
I can't wait, Patty. And Patty, if I can share one more thing in terms of the work that we do in workplace well-being, I think, when we talk about this idea of creating cultures of well-being and creating an environment of well-being, I think it can honestly feel really overwhelming, and like tackling those forces can feel really overwhelming. And what I have seen in the work that I've done now I've worked with over 500 organizations, I've trained over 50,000 managers and leaders, is that hope, which by the way, is the number one thing that people want right now from their leaders. Hope, hope. That's according to Gallup in their most recent survey on leadership. But there's a lot that can happen within the team. Hope lies within the team. And so, for all of you leaders, for all of you people in every workplace, really double down on the team and really start to pay attention to the nuances within the team, even small things like how are we distributing our airtime within our team meetings. It's those kinds of little everyday things that either make or break people's sense of hope. So let's double down on the team right now and think about how we can really elevate and uplift the people that we are within our team. And Patty, I am so grateful to consider you as part of my inner team. So thank you so much.
And I love that. And, in order for our leaders to get that, and hopefully if someone's struggling, they can reach out to us. Both of us are working with leaders and helping leaders find their center, because we can't have psychological safety on a team if anyone, and the leader has a lot of say in how that team atmosphere is, how the energy is the team, what the focus is on that team. And the more our leaders can find their center, their calm, their best self, I believe the better the psychological safety will be for our teams, and the hope then feels better. And that's what teams do for each other, right? We lift each other up, but we can only do that if we're aware of the energy we bring into a situation. And so that energy that you bring in with the 5-10 rule, right? That's just so nice, because even when we don't feel like it, we can be there for someone else. And we know that the science is when we do something, when we write a thank you note, we could be happier for 6 months afterwards, right? When we do 3 good things at night and we remember the things that we're thankful for, those are all things that both lift us up personally, but then will ultimately lift up those around us. So thank you for being in this industry of care for other human beings. And thank you for being in my world, in my orbit, because I just adore you. Thank
I
you.
love you, Patty. Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Thank you so much.